This may sound shocking and hard to believe, but it is in fact true. Now, former UFC featherweight Yair Rodriguez has been released by the UFC. He has been cut by UFC President Dana White. He is no longer a part of the organization. For a fighter who was once considered one of their promising young stars, one of the fighters who would lead the charge into Mexico, into larger Spanish-speaking Latin America, that effort is for now no more, and maybe forevermore will not be the case. Yair Rodriguez, not in the UFC anymore. What the hell happened? Several days ago, UFC President Dana White, I guess, had told Lance Pugmire of the LA Times, or in any case, Lance Pugmire of the LA Times had reported that the UFC, and Dana White in particular, was looking to build that UFC 227 card August 4th. That would be at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And on that card, that's the one that they're trying to put together, GSP versus Nate Diaz. But they were also looking at Zabit Magomedsharipov taking on Yair Rodriguez. Now, that bout was never confirmed. Others reporting that there was nothing, not so much at all there, but it was far from even being close to done, including Ariel Helwani and others. And you'll recall, a little bit later after that report came out, Yair Rodriguez tweeted, #fake news. Well, it appears Dana White didn't like that too much, because after cutting him and making some statements, which I'll read in just a second, he tweeted real news. Now, what were those statements? He said as follows, talking about Yair. The guy's off a year and rejects a fight with Lamas and then doesn't want to fight a guy below him in the rankings. He can go somewhere else. We have no use for him. He calls that fight fake news. This is real news. You'll recall that Yair last fought in May of 2017 at UFC 211 when he lost after a second-round TKO to Frankie Edgar. He had a 6-1 record inside the promotion, and yes, he had taken a year off. You'll also recall a documentary had come out about his life. I had him on my radio show. We had spoken about it. There were also plans that he had to go to the UFC Performance Institute, but he was currently sitting at 11. Zabit Magomedsharipov sitting at 13. Ricardo Lamas a little bit higher, I believe close to around 7 or so. And I don't know exactly all the fights he had turned down, if it was just those two or some other ones, but nevertheless, that's sort of the situation heading in here. That's the position he was in. That's the position he was coming from. And now it's all no more. So what can we really make of this? I got to tell you, this reminds me of like 2007 era UFC when they would come in, somebody would spite them for whatever reason or however they interpreted it, and it'd be swift, punitive action. That's kind of what it feels like. Swift, punitive, and unfair. That's just the way they go. Now, I understand the UFC's position. They're probably a little bit fatigued with guys constantly turning down fights. That can't be easy. Perhaps they offered him a great deal and he didn't take it. God only knows. And they don't have to be in business with anybody they don't want to be in business with. But at the same time, this was a promising guy for the organization. A 6-1 record is nothing to sneeze at. Yes, the Frankie Edgar loss was bad, but probably part of the reason he was taking time off was so that he could retool, get better, figure out what he needed to work on. So the next time he had to face somebody of a particularly high, let's say, championship caliber, he'd be a little more ready. He did have good wins. You'll recall the Andre Fili, sort of like jumping switch kick KO. But, against higher opposition, maybe he needed to do a little bit more work. I think he was pretty much aware of that. It seems to me that tweet probably was what did him in, right? It's one thing to turn down fights that can annoy the organization, whatever your reasons, if they're good or bad. But it's another one to go and antagonize them with that kind of thing. And I know we see fighters asserting themselves much more than they used to, but unless you have power to be immunized from that, it can carry risk still. People have said, oh, well, Nate Diaz has done all kinds of things antagonizing UFC on social media. And Conor McGregor threw a hand truck at a bus. Right, well, that's Nate Diaz and that's Conor McGregor. As we know, there are different tiers of justice based on your value and your relationship to the organization. It appeared that the UFC felt like they could just do without Yair without much concern. My hunch is that another organization would be happy to sign him because his future probably is still very bright in his mid-20s, right? But nevertheless, you can do certain things in this business in accordance with your ability to get away with them. And if the people who hold the keys to the kingdom don't like it, I'm not sure what else to say. It all just seems so short-sighted too, right? I mean, they let Leslie Smith go, and not that letting her go has ruined the bantamweight division in the women's side. A lot of things have made that women's bantamweight division pretty bad, but here was somebody who was doing pretty good. If you look at that, you've got Ketlin Vieira, and you've got Marianne Renault, and everybody else in that division not necessarily doing a whole lot, and they just cut her to be done with her, whether it was for Project Spearhead or not, I don't know. And then you have this situation here, Rodriguez, hashtag fake news tweets, but he could have perfectly valid reasons for turning down fights. In fact, folks have said, it's not a good fight for him to take Zabit Magomedsharipov, which I understand, although I'm a little less sympathetic to, given that they're in close proximity to one another. And if you're trying to make progress, this would be a great way to do it. Nevertheless, if you've got reasons to not take a fight, you don't have to take it. Like, they can't compel you to do it. You're not an employee. You're an independent contractor. That's one of the benefits. They can't just say, up and go do that. So there's that as well. And were they sending a message? Hey, you fighters out there, if you want to start and keep turning down fights, we're watching you. You do anything that gives us reason to punish you in some kind of way, be angry at you in some kind of way. Here we go. Maybe this was just specific to Yair. It's hard to know at this point. But nevertheless, they acted with impunity here. They have the right to do that and the ability. Whether or not it's a good idea long term, well, that's a separate matter. But the UFC has often done things like this just to show the other fighters what time it is. In fact, the kind of funny thing about letting Leslie Smith go is that if there were a union, one of the things that there could be a process for, and this is sort of speculative, but if a organization's going to release a player or an athlete, there can be some kind of process for reinstatement that could be official. Maybe there has to be grounds for the release. Like that is a little more hard to pin down, but nevertheless, there could be some kind of protections put in place to prevent you from being released merely for the act of turning down fights, or some kind of process for reinstatement that would be a little bit more formalized and easier to find, because now he's just out there, Yair is, twisting in the wind. In any case, we'll see how things go, but there you have it. So Zabit Magomedsharipov, he might fight on August 4th, but no matter what, it won't be against Yair Rodriguez, a once very, very promising talent for the organization, hitting a speed bump, taking time off, putting out a tweet, and now he's gone. Stay tuned to this YouTube channel and my radio show, The Luke Thomas Show, on SiriusXM RUSH Channel 93, 3 to 6 p.m. every weekday for more discussion about this. Thanks, guys.